For our first lesson in Algebra 2 preparation, we're going to be reviewing how to solve equations. Now this is huge. We can solve simple equations, we can solve more complicated equations, but we're going to take a second and solve equations on paper. So make sure you are not using Desmos today. We're going to get you used again to those yellow calculators. So if you have not gone to pick up your yellow calculator that's assigned to you, see the number on the wall if you don't know which one's assigned to you. Make sure you get that yellow calculator because you're going to need it, okay? Again, no Desmos today, the yellow calculator only. We're going to get back used to doing that. We're also not going to do the trick that we learned during the STAR test where if we see the word solve, we cut the equation into two pieces and put y equals y equals. You can totally check your work this way, but we need to remember how to do these equations by hand, okay? So we're not doing this today. We're going to solve by hand. We're actually only going to do together problem number 14. Okay, so the rest of this worksheet will be for you to do. When we're solving an equation, most of you guys like starting by putting a line down the center of the equal sign. Cool, it gives you the left side of the equal sign and the right side of the equal sign. Hopefully you notice that both of these parentheses have a number in front of them. And when there's a number in front of parentheses, we're going to have to distribute that number inside. Now distributing means multiplying. So I'm going to multiply negative 5.5 times n, which is negative 5.5m, and negative 5.5 times negative 5.1, which is positive 28.05. Now remember, when you're using a calculator, this is the negative button. So on your calculator, that's down at the bottom near the period. It's a parentheses minus sign, that's negative. And if you're multiplying it by another negative number, you're also going to want to push that negative button. Okay, we keep going. 0.5m, oops, forgot my equal sign. 0.5 times n is 0.5m, and 0.5 times negative 2.1 is negative 2.05. Again, make sure you click the negative button when you're multiplying these numbers, down at the bottom of the calculator next to the period. Okay, now this is the first step in both methods that we're going to show you or remind you how to solve equations. This method that I'm going to use here is called inverse operations. Okay, some of you know the box method, and we'll go back over that in a second, but this one's called inverse operations. For inverse operations, I'm going to find all of the terms that have an m in them, and I'm going to move them to the left side, which means that I have to do the opposite of 0.5m on both sides, and I'm going to line that up with its like term. Basically moving all of the m terms from the right side all over to the left side. So if we do negative, again, make sure you press the negative button, 5.5 minus 0.5, this is going to be negative 6m, and then I can bring down everything else in this problem. Just rewriting it with all the numbers that are left. So if you notice, everything in red just basically dropped down from up top, and everything in blue is what I combined together. Okay, so this is going to cancel because we have a positive and negative. That's why we do the inverse operation. We subtract it over here. All right, fabulous. So now I'm going to look for all of the straight up numbers. These are called constants. These numbers don't have any variables next to them. And I want to move all of the constants, without a variable to the right side, which means I'm going to do negative, the opposite, 28.05 on both sides. And those are just regular numbers, so I'm going to line them up. Again, we do the inverse operation to actually move this number from side to side. And when we do negative 2.05 minus 28.05, we're going to get negative 29.01. So again, I just rewrite everything that I've worked with so far that is not crossed out. So I have negative 6m equal to negative 29.01. The last step here is to isolate the m, which means I need to get rid of this negative 6 that's smushed right next to the m. Two numbers, or a letter and a number smushed next to each other, are currently multiplied, so the inverse of multiplication is division, but I do that on both sides. Okay, the negative 6's are going to cancel, and we're left with m equal to negative 29.01 divided by negative 6, which is negative 4.85. Now, if I were to go back and check my work, using the trick that we learned for the Algebra 1 star, where we put the right side of the equation, sorry, that's the left side of the equation, y equals, right side of the equation, y equals, and look where they cross, this would be the number where they cross. So you can use the tool that we taught you for the STAR test to check your final answer, but we're going to need to get used to these steps. So let's label again what we did so that you have a nice notes for yourself on what happened. So this first step in red, we did distribution. Okay, the next step is we moved all the variables to the left side using inverse operations and combining like terms. Then we moved all the straight up numbers, all the constants, to the right side. Then we divided by the coefficient of x, or m. So the number in front of the letter you're going to divide by, and then you arrive at your solution. Okay, so that's one way that you could solve this equation. Another way you could solve this equation is using the box method. Let's review that box method. So the box method actually starts the same way as the inverse operations method starts, which means after I draw my line, I'm going to distribute these numbers, which means I'm going to multiply just like I did before. So this first step doesn't change. We still get negative 5.5m plus 28.05 equal to 0.5m minus 2.05. Okay, still the same way that I did the first part. But after this step, I'm going to use a visual tool to help organize my information. So I set up two boxes from side to side. Make sure you drop down that equal sign. Okay, and I count up how many things have an m in them, and that's 2. That's going to go on this side. And I count up all of the constants, or just regular numbers. I'm going to put that many boxes on the top here. So 2 things with m's, 2 things that are constants, or just regular numbers. Then all I have to do is organize my information. Anything with an m is going to come to the left side. So here's my 2 things with m's. However, when something crosses that center line across the equal sign, you just simply change its sign. I do the same thing for the constants. We move these guys over, negative 28.05. It became negative because it crossed the center line. And then keep the sign because it didn't cross the center line. I'm going to combine my like terms, which means I'm going to add all of the numbers together that are in top boxes. So negative 5.5 plus negative 0.5 is negative 6m. Negative 28.05 plus negative 2.05. Make sure you click the negative, not the minus button when you're adding these numbers on the calculator. And you're going to get 29.01, sorry, negative 29.01. Very last step is like the last step of inverse operations. You're going to divide by the number in front of the m, in front of the letter, and arrive at your solution, negative 4.85. So you might notice that some of these numbers look very familiar because the box method is just a visually organized method of the inverse operation. So if we write down our steps here again, we have distribute, which means multiply. We draw our boxes, and we move all of the all the variables to that side, and all of the constants, or just regular numbers, to the right side. We're going to CLT, which means combine like terms. And then we're going to divide by the coefficient of the letter to arrive at our solution. So again, the steps are very similar. It's just a visual representation of what we're doing during inverse operations. Now you get to choose which method you use on the rest of this document. Some of the problems are so simple you might be able to solve them in your head. I need to see your work either with inverse operations or the box method shown for credit on this assignment. Remember, you are not using Desmos except maybe to check your work at the end, but I want you to be using the yellow calculator because we need to get used to using those again as they are a tool that you will use in your upper level classes. Have a nice day.